Right. I'm here at Michel Kandinsky, and we're talking about his new film, Canadian Sniper, which was actually, despite the title, which may people may think it's an action thriller, it's actually not. It's actually something completely different, and that's what I really like. I like that it makes you think one thing, but then as you watch the film, you realize it's not what you think it is. But that's not always a bad thing. And I really think overall, this is a fantastic film.
Well, I'm really glad to hear you say that. I mean, the film is, admittedly, I mean, you can kind of think of it as like as a bit of, it's not like it's a bait and switch, but I feel that this, what I was trying to achieve is an honest portrayal of veterans PTSD or war-induced PTSD. Um, and I was, while doing all the research on it and speaking with speaking of veterans, they had all described this kind of um, situation where essentially the way PTSD is for them and for the majority of them is that it's a way where your past experiences kind of are like projected onto your current experiences. They all describe it. They were all saying how in film or in the way it's portrayed in media in general is that it's always like something happens, there's a triggering thing, and all of a sudden there's like this burst of like a flashback, and you're in whatever conflict you're in. And they also said that that's not really what it is. If it was that simple, then you would kind of be aware that you're like, oh no, I'm just having a hallucination, or I'm, I've gone back, into a memory. But what they say is, what they were all saying is that what was so confusing about it is that um, it's like you see the real world and then, or the current world that you're in, and then there's like a projection of your past experiences onto it. And so they kind of like meld together, and you're kind of unsure of what is real and what's not. And that's the confusion. And that's what makes it so traumatizing and reliving those experiences where you're actually not sure as to what's happening, and it leads to a lot of tragic situations. And most of the time, not, but the ones that we hear about are rather tragic.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and so what I want to do is kind of give the more of build a more subjective portrayal of PTSD based on those conversations, based on the research that I've done. And so I, came up with this character who, was was coming back from Afghanistan from. It's never really said how many times he's been there. I mean, because the tour of duty is usually like 1 year, but it's never really clear, and he's not sure either. And that's the kind of thing that I think is also important. That there is this time dilation a little bit of is this one trip? Is it a second trip? How many trips have you taken? You notice the conversations kind of repeat themselves. Yeah. So is that really? But I mean, the truth is, like, when you're dealing with something like that, you're also having the same conversation over and over because people always ask you the same questions, especially once they've identified you as like, oh, you're the veteran guy, so let's talk about veteran stuff. And yeah, so that's kind of that was the genesis of it. I was trying to do a subjective portrayal of war veterans or war PTSD, and hopefully some of that came across. And I felt that I didn't really need to do too much of the. One of the other things that came up is that a lot of films that deal with PTSD or deal with war, there's it's difficult to do a war film without making war seem exciting.
Right.
Right. And the thing is, if because there's an inherent, as you point out, it's like an action movie. Well, action's exciting. I feel viscerally like the character, which is great. I like watching action movies too. But then how do you explore, kind of the deeper fundamental changes of someone who's gone through these traumas and gone through all that, while making a movie that's, that kind of gives you an exhilaration over the very things that that have traumatized someone.
Right.
In a way, other than the opening sequence where we have kind of, and it's a very realistic take on kind of what a sniper specifically goes through. And then it's very quiet, it's very alone. He's not really doing anything, and then something happens. He pulls the trigger, and that's kind of it. That's basically it, right? I eliminated most of the other action stuff because I thought that it would be kind of. I didn't want anyone to feel an exhilaration from what he's doing or what he's showing, and it's more of an internal and more of the kind of like the kind of like a buzzing in your head that you have as you watch. And maybe there's like a low. I mean, I don't know if I don't know if you've seen the film, but I don't know if you have, but there's like a low tension, like a low buzz kind of throughout the film. That, I mean, there's a catharsis. Without giving too much away, there is a catharsis in a way, but then that catharsis doesn't necessarily. There's an emotional climax to the film, but it's not an action beat, right? It's not and that's what I like. The most important thing that this guy can do is say something. Throughout this film, he's very quiet, he's very internal, he's just like keeping it in. And then like the point of the thing is like, oh, well, he said something. Well, that's important. That might be a step forward. And so that's what I was trying. That's effectively what I was trying to do here.
I think you really made it more. You made it more of a human story, and like you said, we see action films where the hero has or the main character has PTSD. We're seeing more of a human quality these days with action flicks. You're seeing more human sides to these characters. Whether they have PTSD, in some cases they might have a disability of sorts, like autism, stuff like that. And I think that's what really important. We don't really need the so-called tough guys of the 80s and the 70s, all that. I like the more human aspect of the character because it really resonates with the audience. I feel like it resonates more with the audience. And one scene that struck out to me was he's on the bus and you got the hockey fan, screaming, like going at him, and he's just like, huh? Like he's not understanding like what? It's like
he can't follow the conversation. He's been away at war for God knows how long. And there's no, you don't have real time. Even nowadays, where it would be much easier, where you would have, you have satellite communication, and even if you're in Afghanistan, I suppose if you're back at a base, you could probably, I mean, they have television and they have internet and all that stuff. But the truth is that usually access to that is limited for various reasons. And then then for someone like a sniper who's out in the field for weeks at a time, dealing with like basically lying in the dirt. I mean, like a mission could be like them crawling into position can take like 48 hours, and that's normal. Like they're just crawling. They have to do it so slowly so that they're effectively invisible, right? So it takes 2 days to move into position, and then for the most part, like those the put in position, they'll signal that they're there, and then they'll wait there for another 48 hours. And more often than not, nothing happens. Like it's not. So then, by the time he gets back, let's say to base, and even if he had internet access, one of the Chicago scores, so much time, like the relative pace of time is also different. Right? Like 48 hours to crawl, I don't know, let's say 500 feet, 1,000 feet maybe. Yeah. And then he comes back and it's like, oh yeah, by the way, the Stanley Cup or whatever. It just doesn't make any sense. And so this guy who's, it's a very, very Canadian thing to talk about hockey scores, and everyone has their opinion on it. It's the big sport, right? So it's such a scene where he kind of he's alienated. This guy's having him. He's trying to have a conversation, but I mean, but this guy or the sniper is not able to have any kind of connection because he doesn't it's like he's speaking another language. I don't understand where you're coming from at all. So he just kind of have to kind of ignore him. And the other guy doesn't care. He just wants to talk. It's an empty bus, right? And I think we've all been on situations like that where somebody sometimes stripped up a conversation. You're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. But, we're stuck on this ride for God knows how many hours, I guess, go on. Yeah.
Exactly.
He's not going to stop him, but yeah. Plus, I think it's important to have a little bit of, even in a very, a movie that deals with serious subjects or serious themes, I think it's important to have a little bit of levity, and I think that scene kind of, especially contrasted with like we were just in Afghanistan, you just shot someone, and then boom, he's like on this bus after getting dismissed by the army effectively, just like they put him in, they pencil him out and he's gone. Nobody really cares. And that scene, the dismissal scene, is well, I mean, that's pretty accurate. That's pretty well the way the Canadian forces do it. But the reason why I wanted to emphasize it is because there's this thing where the armed forces of any countries or the army puts a lot of effort into training people to go from civilian life to military life. there's like, I mean, that takes months. To become a sniper takes like even more time. And there's all this time that they take, all this effort and all these like mentors and all these things that they put on you. But once you're released, there's no decompression. There's no follow-ups. There's no anything. It's just basically like, oh, okay, you're no longer part of the army. Good luck. See you. You know, you may get a pension, you may not.
Yeah.
And yeah, right. And then so yes, there is. I mean, to be perfectly fair, there's veterans affairs and all that stuff, but most veterans don't go there because there's a stigma that if you go to veterans affairs and talk about mental issues, it means you're unstable or dangerous. I mean, there's a stereotype of like the dangerous army vet or whatever, which is also 99% of the time that's they're not dangerous to anyone but themselves, right? So there's a stigma attached to this, and most of them don't even go there. So essentially, once they're out of the army, that's the last they've seen them. That's the last they've had any of that, any dealings with anyone there. So I thought that's actually the title. That's why it's very important. There's a comma in there. Because that's how he's just being dismissed as like, and it's like being a number. He's Canadian and he's a sniper, and that's all that particular institution cares about. They don't, he doesn't have a name, right? So
exactly.
So
yeah. And Francois Arnaud, I gotta commend him, man. He did such a fantastic job in the lead role. And I saw him in one other film years ago, where he was a radio DJ, and he decides to, I think he wanted to break a record for like not sleeping, and he ends up getting threatened. And I can't remember the name off the tip of my tongue. I saw it was years ago.
I can't remember the name, but I think I know what movie you're talking about. He's kind of stuck in a box, right?
Yes,
yes.
And when I saw him in that, I'm like, this guy shows so much emotion. And like it's not like a one-dimension performance. He brings out so much in this one little, and the fact that he's in one little box, having to deal with the situation, and then seeing him in this, I just like, this guy is an amazing actor. I mean, like the way he played it out here, this is a guy who seriously has issues and is trying to like get his life back together in a way. So my question to you is, what was it like working with Francois on this one?
Well, I mean, it was great. He is a really great actor. He put so much. He did a lot of his own research. He did so much time into this role prior to coming over, and all the accolades that he's getting. He just won a Best Actor award in Vienna, which is great. I think 100% deserved. And he is a very brave actor, I would say. There's a lot of things he was willing to do. I mean, it was all on the page. It's not like we were really thing, but that amount of interiority where he basically plays inside of himself, and you're just the camera just on his face, and I'm a lot of it is I would basically ask him to like run the lines in your head but don't say anything. And then he's kind of like he's acting out what the script is, but he's just using his face, and he's just like this just a great expressive face and those eyes.
Yeah.
That can give you so much meaning, which is like a glance, or he's just looking over or whatever. And he's a absolutely phenomenal actor. And I also think he enjoyed a lot of the physical preparation and a lot of the he went through a whole course of like how you take a gun apart, all of that stuff. That's also shown in the film. There's a lot of like assembly and all that stuff, gunsmithing, I guess you would call it. And I think he really enjoyed that, and just his attention to detail, and sticking through. And it was not an easy shoot. It was it was pretty tough, and especially for him because he's literally never seen, right? There's not too many films where it's like every scene has him in it. Yeah. So we're focusing on him every day, and he has to deal with me every day. It's like at a certain point, that's probably pretty tiring. He's dealing with the same crew, you know what I mean? And all of this stuff, and everyone wants something from him. And but he's such a great, such a great professional actor. With so much, he has so much range, and I feel that he sometimes gets to go there, but sometimes he doesn't, and I feel like this role was great in that he got to kind of keep things in and then kind of let it out too. yeah, he actually when we were shooting it, obviously when you shoot a film, you shoot out of sequence, right? So that the emotional catharsis scene was like, I don't know, maybe a week in or something like that, maybe a week and a half in of the shoot. And he did it, and then I remember he was telling he had a little bit of a break, and he came back, and he was just like, man, I don't know if I can get back to like being this like bound up guy. I let everything go. I let all, and I don't know if I can get there. And I was like, well, let's see what we can do. I think just have to go back to, and he managed to be able to bottle all of that stuff up. But he said that there was a certain almost like a physical transformation from the amount of like repression that he had to do to play the character, and then to let it out, and then he had to put it all back in again. He's like, oh man, I just let it all out. Like, why won't you let me? Why won't you let me just like be, healed, kind of? So I thought that was very interesting, and he's an absolutely phenomenal actor, and somebody who whose work if you're not familiar with, and he acts a lot. You should be following him. Absolutely,
Definitely.
amazingly well deserved prize for best actor. So yeah.
I'm really glad that it was a collaborative effort between you. And I like the fact that even though he had to shoot the catharsis scene after, like beforehand, and the fact that afterwards he's like, how do I put it all back in? I like the fact that he collaborated with you on that, because I know there are probably actors out there who like once they say I can't go back to this, they'll end up like quitting. But it just shows what dedication he had to this role and was willing to bring it out. And I think that's what's important for this film.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. Yeah, it's amazing we are able to do, and honestly, like we didn't have like it's very often. I mean, an actor can do a great performance very often by acting off other people, right? Off other actors, so they can react. And remember, in this film, outside of the two other, I mean, there's this he has scenes with three other people total, and really he only interacts properly with two, right? With the sheriff and the girl. Everyone else is kind of like they're at a distance, and the fact that he's still able to fully give you fully emotional reactions on that, and then also so much acting is by himself. Like it was like very often it would be like me. Sometimes I would actually run the camera as well, so it'd be me and a camera, and then him, the sound person, whatever, the crew is somewhere far away. And then just going through the woods and kind of like going like, okay, let's react to like an explosion in the distance or something like that, and he would kind of be working on his face like that. It was great. It was absolutely like just an amazing acting experience on that. And I actually learned a lot about acting from him. I feel that is one of the things that I think directors also can bring, is like if you bring an open mind and don't close yourself off to just either keeping it to the page or just keeping it to what you had originally envisioned. I find the actors can bring a lot of stuff, and there's very many scenes where I wouldn't say it wasn't improvised in the sense that he just like surprised me something. We talk about it and be like, well, that sounds cool. Let's try that. Including like there's a scene where he picks up a snake. Well, that's not in the script. He literally, and there was literally a snake on the ground. He just picks it up. I mean, like it's like a garter snake, not dangerous or anything like that. But he just picked it up and decided to play that scene, which I thought was, great improv, great thought, because we were in the woods and we saw the snake, and it's like, well, what if I pick? Let's do it. I was like, let's go. It's great. So.
You mentioned this was a tough shoot in some way. How long did shooting actually take on this film?
It was a total of a month. Is how long it took. But there was some breaks in between, and it was a tough shoot also because we had this shoot took place right as it was in Ontario, so which in Ontario, Canada was shot. It was the first film to go after the pandemic. Protocols were starting to be kind of loosened up, so we were the first production. So all these obstructions, rules, and extra things that we had to follow were making it very difficult. And then also there was like a break in the shoot because of that, and had to do all these things. But even just starting the shoot, we were all ready to go a year before we went to camera, and then the pandemic was just like, no, forget it, shut it down. There's nothing happening. We're not going. So that sucked. And then, so we waited a year, luckily like a year later, we were, ready to go, but that was a break. And then, it's still it's still a low budget production. So there was a lot of, there's a lot of things, when especially with shooting at night, is made extra difficult when you can't, shut down a full, the whole space, for example, and all that. So there was a lot of logistics, and some of the most of the other actors were only available for a couple of days here, a couple of days there, and we kind of had to shoot around that. And between that and we started shooting in September, but it's way north in Canada. It's near a city called Sudbury, but even further north than that. And so when you started in September, it was quite nice. It was actually very pleasant. But then as it started to get towards the end, especially the nights, it was freezing. It was very, very cold. And there's a scene where you have to go into like the lake and all that stuff, and it was cold. And you got to be a trooper to get in there. So yeah, it was a lot of difficulty because of that.
Yeah, well, you certainly pulled it off in the end because overall, once again, this was a great movie. And I think people who like character studies, if you will, that's what I like to call this, a character study film. People who are into this definitely will want to see this one because this is totally different than what most will expect. And overall, I think people do need to check this one out. I think they're gonna get a really good vibe out of this in the end.
I mean, I thank you for saying that. I really do think that it is a strong character study. It is as honest a portrait of, I think, of like military PTSD as has been shown, and focuses only on that. It's not just an aspect of the character. It is about that, and kind of. Maybe you had mentioned earlier that in action movies, say from the 80s and 90s, we had a different picture of what the hero is, and now 2000s, 2010s, 2020s, we're kind of it's kind of changing or shifting a little bit where there's more humanity. Even in a regular action movie, there's more humanity of the character and his opponents and all that stuff. And I think this one is very much about like I'm trying to humanize the um, um, humanize PTSD sounds kind of suspicious, but just trying to give you a humanistic portrait of what it is like to actually have this PTSD and take that first step to maybe it's not a curable thing. It's just something you kind of live with, and you can manage it better or worse. And I think it's important given that. And I think his portrayal or Francois' portrayal of this character is a very he's kind of like maybe he's part of that the new age action hero type, I guess, that we're kind of getting into, where it's a human who does a dirty job as opposed to kind of like a He-Man action figure that that you're just kind of smashing together like when you were a kid. So,
Yeah, and not just that, it's more about him trying to, what's he going to do with his life now that he's back home? Like, basically what's in store for him? And
right.
And I think personally, I would love to see a follow-up where we get to see the aftermath. What is going to happen with what happens to the sniper, and then what's in store for him now that he's gone through all, he's home, and while he's trying to, it seems like in this movie he tries to figure out what he wants to do, and then finally there should be a follow-up, like what he is doing now and how he's dealing with the PTSD.
I mean, the film kind of loops on itself a little bit, and so the way we end up is he is he able to break out of the cycle that made his father, who's completely traumatized by his own war time in Vietnam because his father went to Vietnam, and will he end up just like him, sitting at that same table doing the same things, and just essentially just like repressing everything and just keeping it down there, and drinking himself into a stupor every day or every night, or will he be able to take a step and maybe by speaking to people like the sheriff in the film, maybe meeting other veterans, and maybe not even veterans, but just like being able to see like, wait, okay, so if I can talk about it, if I can identify it, maybe I can move past it, almost like not like a form of therapy, but like just a way of dealing with the the repressed feelings, emotions, and all of the everything that's associated with wartime trauma. And I feel, I mean, if you were to ask me, I'm not sure whether whether he would be able to make it or not. I think I leave that to the
Yeah, I would.
audience
Yeah,
to
and yeah,
ask
the
themselves.
ambiguity. That
Yeah,
ambiguity, I think, will work
yeah,
out fine. Like you would have to guess for yourself.
yeah.
Like, you can only hope.
Right. I mean, we hope so. We hope so. I mean,
Yeah,
he's a sympathetic enough guy that we hope that he will overcome something. I mean, he also has like some pretty nasty qualities as well. But there is there's I mean, that's just humans for you, and whether he's able to overcome or take that step, I mean, I believe that's what he wants. But I try to be positive about it, and I would like to think that he is aware of um, kind of what's happening to him in the end, and maybe that there is a way of overcoming it. So I would say that's something, because there's an aspect of it, of this. It's like generate part of a PTSD issue is that men of a certain generation don't talk about their feelings. We'll talk about shared trauma. We'll talk about stuff. So, and it's passed down from his father, as demonstrated in the film. And if he's able to break out of cycle, once he says something and he has this moment where he's able to say something, then maybe there's a chance that maybe there's a wall, and maybe that the generational trauma stops there. Maybe if he's on the other side of the wall, things will get better. Maybe. Yeah, that's what we'll see. But I find it interesting that you're, I think it could be really interesting, actually. Like kind of like what did happen to him?
yeah,
Was he able to make come back to the farm and make a life there? All the elements are there for him to make a life, right?
yeah.
A new life. But will he put them together?
Awesome. Well, is there any more festivals where this film's playing at? Is there anything going on with distribution yet?
It is so it is playing it's playing in Boston this week, the Boston Film Festival. And it is I mean there's a sales agent, Cardinal XD, that represents it in worldwide except for Canada. And it is available everywhere. There's been quite a bit of interest, especially in French language territories, where the film is in partially in French, partially in English, and partially in this kind of combination of English and French, which is spoken, which is very true to that area of Canada, which is where there's kind of like a mix of the two. And it's a very specific accent that isn't even. I know people think of Canadians as speaking French, but this dialect of French is very specific, and actually hasn't. I'm hard. I don't think there's been another film that's actually used that language or that dialect as the main language. So it's unique in that way as well. And I think that was an interesting thing. What I was trying to do with that is basically I knew that it was hard. They were isolated. It was hard to talk, and then I was like, okay, let's give him another band. Let's make it so that he's like in this community that in and of itself is even more linguistically isolated. So it's even harder to throw obstacles at him. Hopefully the sniper makes it out.
Yep, exactly. So finally with this out now, is there anything you're working on now that you can talk about, like a new movie or?
I am working on another project. We have a script, and we're just trying to get financing in place. It's a little bit. I'm gonna, without giving too much away, because but I would describe it as werewolf adjacent. So it's kind of maybe an exploration and a new take or a different take on maybe the werewolf mythology, or in an urban post-pandemic setting. So there we go.
Awesome. That's great. I mean, I'm all for that. I love werewolf flicks. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd love for you to watch that one as well. I'm very curious what you think. I think you'd like it. That one will. This one. The follow up is a little bit more genre, is what I would say. So let's go there. Yeah.
Well, as Michelle said, Canadian Sniper is at the Boston Film Festival this week. Definitely check, if you're there, please check this movie out. You're really going to enjoy it, especially if you want something different than, despite the title, despite something different, you're definitely going to want to see this film. And Francois Arnaud is amazing in this film. And Michel, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about it.
Sure. Thank you so much, Albert. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for your support, and I'm glad you enjoyed the film. So I'm very happy about that.
All right. Take care. Stay awesome.
All right. Take care, man. Bye-bye.